You're listening to the Moms Working Overtime podcast, the community of women you've been searching to find for so long. We bring together our mamas in waiting, brand new moms, stay-at-home moms, working moms, and the moms who maybe just have a little bit more experience than the rest of us. We're all here for community, support, and finding ways to show up better for our families each and every day. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I hope you love what you find on today's episode. Welcome back to the Moms Working Overtime podcast for our Thursday interview series. You all know this is my absolute favorite episode that we do each week, and I get more and more excited with each guest that we bring on because everyone just has a little bit something unique, something fun. And when I say something fun today, mamas, you're going to love this episode. We're just going to have a good time and laugh about all things motherhood. I have with me today stand-up comedian Alyce Chan, and Alyce and I have already just been joking about all the things that we can talk about. And looking at her brand, I'm going to encourage you all to follow her on social. The links are in the description as always, but you're going to see that everything we talk about today, everything in Alyce's brand is, hey, you got to laugh at yourself sometimes in motherhood. And that is the topic of today's episode. It's everything that we're going to discuss. Alyce, I want to give you a little bit of time to introduce yourself first. If you don't brag on yourself enough, I'll take over, but I want you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Oh, thank you. Well, that was such a wonderful introduction. Thanks for having me, Elena, on your podcast. I'm so happy to be here. Always happy to talk to another mom, another adult who is understanding the whole journey of motherhood. That is my therapy. Selfishly, that's why I'm on today. It's a nice break. And my kids are at home, so you may hear them in the background, which is kind of like, I guess, everyone's life, right? When you're trying to do your
Everyone who's listening will relate.
Yes. Yeah. So I already told them to quiet down, but they'll probably won't remember in like a few minutes. And Alyce Chan, like you said, and MomCom NYC is my platform where I try to connect moms with each other, and also, more importantly, hoping they connect with themselves. And I think we all have a tough time, especially new moms to be. And I know that from firsthand because I had a very hard time my first few years of being a mother, and knowing what I know now, I wish I had a supportive community back when I really needed it. And I'm hoping that that's what I can service to other moms and moms to be. Just making you know that, you're not alone in this journey, and it is hard, and it's normal to be frustrated, and it's normal to say, yes, it is hard, and to take a break. And the best way to do that is really, like you said, find humor in everything, laugh at yourself, laugh at your kids.
Yeah. And that is exactly what this podcast is all about. I remind them all the time, Alyce, that whatever you're going through, even if other moms don't talk about it enough, there's other moms going through it. And there's things that we don't like to say out loud. I was actually putting this on my social media. We don't like to talk about the times that your kid won't stop crying and now you're crying. We don't like to talk about when you feel like a failure or when you raise your voice. No mom highlights that about herself, but we all do it.
We all do it. Yes. And it's funny, like when you start saying and you start talking, expressing really honest stuff, you'll be so surprised because other women will be sharing the same experiences. And that's one way to connect too, like on a really human level, because we all know motherhood is rough, but we are also overdosing on social media where there's highlights and edited versions. Like the stuff I see on my Instagram, even that is highlighted, right? Like I've edited those reels. It's all acting. I'm in a good mood for acting, right? But those are drawn from real life experiences where I probably have yelled at my kids like much louder than you see me do it on the reels. So everything you see, take it with a grain of salt. We're all going through the same thing, and yeah, you're human. it's okay to lose your shit sometimes.
Absolutely. And we all do. Even the quietest and calmest of moms, they do. But we'll talk a little bit more about your journey in comedy, and I want you to be able to talk more about that as we get further into the podcast. But my listeners know, and I've told you, I start every single episode with the same question. This is my favorite question to ask my guests and just hear, because sometimes it's not what you expect of someone. So when you think about who you were before you were a mom, who you are now, I know it's hard to even think back, like, what did I do with all my time and everything? Who were you before you were a mom? And looking at your motherhood journey now, are you the kind of mom that you thought you would be?
Ooh, that's such a great question too. I love that you start your podcast with that question. Um, who I was before that, I actually, surprisingly, I can remember this. If you asked me this my first year of being a mom, I don't think I would have answered that well. I don't think I
Mhm,
would have known. But, I feel like I'm a seasoned enough mom, and I think I've done enough of kind of like, really honing in my passions and really taking care of myself. Although it's hard because time management isn't my best trait. And but I do try to do it a lot in terms of like what makes Alice happy, what makes
mhm,
Alice like myself again. And it always goes back to connecting with friends, connecting
mhm,
with strangers at comedy shows. And that's why I love performing live, because of that connection. I
mhm.
get to meet some people who are following me on Instagram, and there's so many times, Elena, I don't want to sound like a creep. I'm like, oh, we can be best friends. Like I
Yes.
hang out with all, but I'm like, that's not realistic, right? Like I don't even
Yeah.
have time to like call my mom sometimes. I don't have time to like my best friends and I will have months in the calendar planning a lunch, and then
Yes.
someone will cancel, someone will get sick. So for me, I think before being a mother, I slept a lot, and it's the same thing. I love sleep. I still love sleep. I just don't get enough.
Yeah.
I still love my vices like coffee and my pastries. I still am
Mhm,
a person. I'm still what I am more of now, more nurturing and more compassionate and more understanding. And I have to say I am a little more patient, even though my kids test me every day. I think that's the practice that has made me more patient, but more compassionate, and
mhm,
um, really wanting to connect with humans. And I really feel moms like when I see a new mom or a mom to be, I just want to help and support the mom, like with
mhm.
nothing back. I just know how hard it is.
Yes.
I just want to be an ally and supportive. That's all. Um, but I'm the same person. I'm still weird and wacky, and I'll still do things that may embarrass my kids. And I want them to know that you have to be yourself. And it doesn't matter what age you are, everyone still has an inner child. And I think that's important to bring out. I think people are too
Mhm,
serious in life and they can't laugh at themselves. And it's kind of sad when you go through a day and you can't laugh at yourself. We're all
mhm.
we're all goofy, out that side. I'm still goofy. I do that around my kids in front of their friends. I try to make them laugh, and I still am that same person. And I'm so glad it did take me a while to come back to that same person.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
first year of motherhood, I was just focused on being the perfect mom. And my idea of being the perfect mom was always being there for my kid, not for myself. Like I didn't even know what self
mhm,
was. And that was something really new to me. And I also thought it was selfish when I was taking time for myself. Now I know it's not true at all. And I
mhm.
know it's a hard concept when you escape, not escape, but leave the kids at home.
It
And
might feel like escape sometimes,
yeah,
Alice.
yeah, yeah, I guess it came out that way because it really does feel like an
It might feel that way.
yeah, I call it vacation. No, no, sometimes and you need it, right? Because being around kids is it's very draining
Mhm,
because you're always on. You have to be, you have to keep your kids alive, clean, fed, and you have to make sure they don't grow up to be selfish jerks and type
mhm,
a-holes, right? So everything you say to them is going to make an impact. It's going to make a mark on them. And also coming from a different generation, my parents are immigrant parents. I have a lot of unpacking to do. And when I
Mm.
start talking to the kids, I have to make sure, uh-oh, am I acting like my mom? Am I shaming them to
Yeah.
do it? Like, I have to really work hard at that. And
Mhm.
sometimes I catch myself, my kid was really upset yesterday because he didn't have the right chicken nuggets. And then I start going, oh my gosh, wow, mom took you to the park today. And I was like, oh, here I go. Guilt trip. List out all the things I did for you and be grateful. In my head, I was like, but mom took you to the park and we had so much fun. I was like, Alice, turn it back, dial it back, dial it back. I just want you to be, appreciative of, like, I'm like, oh, I screwed up. This
Yep.
a
It's
lot of
just a constant learning process. But I think too, Alice, we need those moments to unpack our day. If you don't have a moment of silence in the day, you can't even look back and think, okay, how did I respond to my child today? How could I have responded better? If you don't even have, if you're in survival mode, you don't even have a second to unpack those and you just keep showing up in this complete chaos, not really monitoring your own responses because you don't have time.
Right, right. Yeah, we gotta have that time to reset, go back into the wild, which
Yeah.
is
I always tell moms I work with one-on-one, I say, you feel guilty for the 30 minutes to an hour that you may want to take for yourself, for self-care, for going to get a workout, taking a bath, whatever that might be. You're worried about those 30 minutes to an hour. What I'm worried about is how you show up in the other 23 hours of the day. And obviously, hopefully there's some sleep in there, but how you act in that 30 minutes to an hour and taking time for yourself, how do you get back to your kid in the other 23 hours because of that? And that's what we have to focus on.
yeah. And yesterday, for some reason, like I had a great evening the night before with a live comedy, and I met some random strangers and some friends who came out to our show. And I felt like, I'm doing something that Alice loves and it
Mhm.
really aligns with who I am and what I'm giving back to my community. When I got home yesterday, I connected with my oldest kid, and right now he's 10, and it's sometimes a hit or miss, sometimes
Mhm.
bad day and it'll impact me. And then I'll be like, why didn't he like look at me when I said I love you, And then yesterday we connected in a really fun way. And in my head, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make it fun. Like I wanted him to put his shoes
Mhm.
away. And I start singing to him, and then I could see him like, smiling, but he went and he put his shoes away. And the next thing he did was like, he's like, Mommy, can I do anything else? I'm gonna do the laundry. He actually did a load of laundry. Like, and he
Praise
kept
the Lord.
I was just like, whoa. And then I just like, keep this going. I
Yep.
praising him. And then I just made it fun. And I'm like, just make it fun for your kids.
Mhm.
But in order for me to have done that, I had to have I had 3 hours of my
Mhm.
alone time to do
Yep.
that. Last week was not like that because I didn't have any alone time. And there was a lot of yelling and screaming, and no one put their shoes away and no one did
No
laundry. It
one did a load of laundry.
was just me.
I love it. So, Alice, when you think about your journey in comedy, arriving at this career in comedy, how did you get here and why motherhood? We're joking about this interaction with your son, and I'm sure this is the basis of a lot of the things that you can use for your shows, but why focus on motherhood in your comedy?
Ooh, good question. So before being a mom, I was in comedy and I was doing obviously different material. I was talking about my cat because I lived with my cat
Yeah.
and dating life and New York City life. And then I stopped doing comedy when I was like about 8 months pregnant. And then I took maybe 3 years off. And I then tried to get back into it with my second child, and I was doing the same material. So here I am, a mom of two, a toddler, a baby and a toddler, doing cat jokes, boyfriend jokes, living in the city jokes, which did not align with who I
I was
was.
gonna say, how was your social life then?
Oh my gosh, I had no social life.
Yeah.
Babies and the parks, and I met some moms at the parks, and I'm like, but I kept talking about my other life that I had, a
Mhm.
previous life, which I didn't know anymore. That wasn't
Yep.
me anymore. And I'm like, why am I talking about these? Well, this is because they were old jokes and I didn't have time to create new jokes. Also, in my head, I was like, no one wants to hear about motherhood.
Mhm.
You know, we were fed a lot with societies like cover up when you're breastfeeding. No one wants you know, a mom talking about her kids at work.
Mhm.
You know, show
Mhm.
up, be proud that you're a mom, but don't talk about it like you're a mom, right?
Mhm.
We there's so many rules of society that tells you you have to be a good mom, but you can't act like a mom. You know, you can't leave early to pick up your kid or when your kid's sick.
Mhm.
So in my head, I was like, no one wants to hear about motherhood. And then it wasn't until I went to a comedy show. I was probably like 5 months postpartum after my second kid. And for some reason, I was just like, "Ah, I really need a break. I was at my breaking point.
Mhm.
Physically, I needed to get out of the house, especially with a newborn that was colicky. And there was a bar across the street, literally no excuse to not go. It was really 20 steps from my apartment. It was an all women's comedy show, and I went there, and after the show, I felt like a different person, and I felt like something just awoken in my soul, and I told myself I need to get back into comedy. I don't know how.
Mhm.
We'll have to. So I start doing open mics again, back to the drawing board, and I did the same material and it flopped. I start producing shows because no one would hire me, no one would put me on because again, no one wants to hear from a mom. And then I was like, you know what? If no one's going to put me on, I'm going to produce my own show. I'm going to talk about my current life as a mom. I'm going to talk about postpartum depression.
Mhm.
I hated my husband at that time. And it resonated with women and moms.
Mhm.
And I started to do live comedy shows in the morning. And I'm like, you know what? People who are on their maternity break right now need adult time. They don't need more
Mhm.
yoga and baby classes. They don't need more sing-along classes. So I offered that escape for new moms and they were able to get adult time in the morning. They were able to have their babies crawl around clean mats and not needing to pay for a babysitter,
Yep.
and it worked. It was my first time producing a show for parents called BYOB, Bring Your Own Baby. And it worked for 2 years. And after that, I started to go on social media and posting mom related, parent related
Mhm.
memes. And I found that there was a community of moms
Here
hungry.
comes the moms.
Yeah. And I was like, there is a community.
Mhm.
And I found that through the pandemic. It was really the pandemic when I started Instagram.
Mhm. I love that. It really is. I had a friend, she just announced that they were expecting, and she's like, "As soon as I announced it on social media, it was like they all came and swarmed me." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Mom Club is the best club." I can't say that enough. Mom Club is the best club. And when you reach out for help or share something vulnerable or even just start joking about something that no one else will joke about, y'all come together.
Yeah, yeah, and I've met so many friends through Instagram.
Mhm.
Like, even like, it's the weirdest, like, I'll go to a city and be like, "Oh my gosh," like, and I'll meet someone, a random mom stranger. There's like 0% chance of knowing that, like, I'll get murdered, right?
Yeah.
But prior to that, I remember, like, meeting random strangers online on a
Mhm.
date. I'm like, "I may get killed."
Yep.
I'm like, "You know what? She's a mom. I'm not gonna get killed. We're gonna be best friends." It's a
Yep.
totally different community out there. It's I'm so grateful
Mhm.
for this community and for all the support that I've received for my comedy. It's just so
Yeah.
much love, and yeah, it is the best.
Well, I know we've talked about this. Comedy is obviously a pretty male-driven industry. I feel like it's getting a little bit better, but
Yeah.
it is a male-driven industry. And so when you come into this, not only are you a female, but now you're talking about motherhood,
Yeah.
which, maybe not everyone is used to. I think just like with the male versus female in the industry, all of this is getting better with social media. But how has that experience been being the female amongst all these men in comedy?
Yeah, it was harder. It was such a pivotal moment when I realized had to shift my content from
Mhm.
a single woman living with a cat in New York City to motherhood, because the support and the audience was mostly moms and women.
Mhm.
And I'm like, hey, you know what? I have an audience that will, appreciate this type of content.
Mhm.
And there is a lot of funny content to be said. And I was so glad that I could shift away from the dating. Like, there's so much of that. There's
Yes.
so much of dating in New York City is hard. And let's talk about,
Mhm.
no, there's so much of that already. I'm like, it's oversaturated. And I always felt like it was a male dominated industry. Even when I went to open mics down into these city bars or bars behind restaurants that only had, like, there were like, sometimes I was performing for 18 men in the back room and I was pregnant. No laughs. They wanted me off the stage. No one wanted
Yep.
to hear from a pregnant Asian woman who's like past her 30s, right? Like, it was hard, and I was like, "Well, I guess," at that time, I really thought, "There's why do comedy?" Like,
Mhm.
no one wants to hear what I have to say, and now there's this platform. There are people who wanna hear from moms, and it's not, and now I'm just not talking about motherhood, I'm talking about just life in general as an adult in her 40s, challenges of motherhood and, relationships, challenges, and funny stories about pets or adult life or being
Mhm.
Asian, and there's so much, and
Mhm.
realizing that, because of social media has really opened the doors for people like me, and
Mhm.
I don't think there's a age limit. I think and a lot of moms have come up to me and said, being a stand-up comedian is on my bucket list. I just want to try it once. And I've had women who I have given them the platform, like, come to this show I'm producing,
Mhm.
do 3 to 5 minutes. I will train you because I want you to do it. Because
Yeah.
I think it's so healing to do it. Whether you want to do it once or make it into a hobby or have it
Mhm.
full-time
Mhm.
career, I totally encourage people to do it. And I want to be that person that will give you that platform, because to be honest, if you're a woman and you're over 30, especially if you're a mother, you're going to have a hard time finding people giving you the platform to
Mhm.
unless you go to an open mic where it's usually comedians who don't want to laugh at your content.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's changed. The industry has changed somewhat, which is great. It's still very heavily male dominated. We need to see more women pushing the envelope, and we are seeing a lot. If you look at
Mhm.
Netflix, almost like 40% are women being,
That's so great. Yeah.
yeah.
I love it. So I think it's much needed too, because we talked about this in the beginning of the episode. Moms need validation. Comedy is that mixture of validation. Like, yes, this happens to lots of moms, but then mixing it with the humor of like, just because it's happening, mama, does not mean it has to keep you in the dumps all the time. Like, we can laugh about this and we can move on. But you hinted at postpartum and having some postpartum depression and struggling through that. So, would you say that you've always had this knack for finding humor in motherhood, or have you gone through phases where you're like, "Nothing about this is funny, this sucks?"
Yeah, that's a good question. I've always had a knack of finding humor in anything, and I think for me, I think at it happened early, like about 9.5 years old. It was a survival tactic for me because I was bullied for how I looked and how I
Mhm.
talked, and I was very shy, and that came because English was my second language. So I already had barriers. And growing up in an immigrant household, it was very different from all my other friends who had very different homes. And
Mhm.
for me to make friends was very hard. And I remember reading a book that said, if you're funny, you'll make friends. You have to learn how to tell jokes. So I
Mhm.
actually studied um, a joke book
Yeah.
and I rehearsed the jokes. I didn't understand half them. They were actually I was like 10 and my aunt at that time gave me this paperback. She's like, "Here, study this. It's 101 dirty jokes." And I would study 5 to 8 of them every night. And the next day I would tell them. Most of my audience were boys. But I remember the feeling of validation, of that
Mm.
empowerment of making people laugh, having that power to make people laugh and how
Mhm.
it felt. Also, I was a middle child, so I really needed the validation.
Yep.
And I think at that time I realized, oh wow, working on humor is very important. It helped me survive the cruel elementary years,
Mhm.
and it just followed me, and I just had a knack for it. And I think it was also being very creative, like my parents argued a lot. And I think coming from a tumultuous household, you're left to defend yourself. And
Mhm.
that in turn can make you really creative because you're finding out solutions. How do I stop this? How do I make my mom and dad
Mhm.
love each other again? So
Yep.
I think that really helped me. And it just, yeah, throughout my whole career life, I really relied on humor, breaking the ice, being in board meetings with CEO levels. It was always my humor that I think connected me with my coworkers and
Mhm.
bosses. And I think it's a very important skill set to have. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and then just, I fell into motherhood because I realized I'm like, I can actually drown in this, or I can use this and lift other people up and
Mhm.
use that as my therapy.
Mhm. Absolutely. So when you think about your building jokes and you think about your motherhood experiences, when you're specifically focusing on that topic, I know you said you've branched out a lot, into different areas of your life. But with motherhood, what's your favorite inspiration? What type of content do you love to joke about most in motherhood?
I love I do love showing that motherhood has so many facets, and I want people to understand like what's going on in our heads. Like I could be talking to my husband, but I'm already thinking, do the kids have enough yogurt for tomorrow's snack? Because I need to put a cooler pack into the freezer. Otherwise, it's not gonna be cool enough. And are the lunch bags washed? I'm already thinking about all those. The
Mhm.
mental capacity that you need as a mom, the little fine details. I like to just exaggerate how crazy and fanatic I can get as a mother, like packing lunches, getting ready for school in itself is like CrossFit, and times I like
Yes.
to exaggerate all that stuff because sometimes it does feel like that. And
Yeah.
I think exaggeration is a key to making something really funny. And some people take it too seriously and they're like, come on, Alice, that's not that bad. And I'm like, it's a joke, you
Yeah.
know, exaggeration.
And sometimes it feels like that is the dumpster fire that is our life.
Yes,
Like,
and it's like it's kind of funny. Like, I had this post about how someone asked me, "Oh, now that the kids are back at school, you could do all the things that you want." Like, the things I want. But what are those things that I want? I'm like, I'm too busy reading the school emails. I only have 2 kids. Some people have 4 kids and 5. And you have to keep track of all the emails. And those kids go to different schools. Then like
Mhm.
post school activities, are you signing them up? Are they getting swim lessons? Do they have enough clean underwear? There's so much. And I think it's funny to make fun of like how crazy moms get in their heads, and
Yep.
I like making fun of that. It's
Yeah.
just
What do you think are the areas that moms struggle to laugh at themselves the most? Like when it comes to motherhood, and have you ever cracked a joke about an area of motherhood and mom's just we're not there yet where that's funny yet?
Oh, I feel like every aspect of motherhood is funny. Um, I don't know. I think I've touched on many aspects of motherhood, like being annoyed by your husband when he does something nice, like just or like he can't find something and you're annoyed, or
Mhm,
he's around, and you're annoyed. Needing needing time alone, I think is
mhm.
something I joke about a lot
Yeah.
because I think that's really important. And or sibling fights, or I don't think I joke enough. I don't really touch on postpartum
Mhm.
depression. And that I haven't found anything to be funny. Uh
Yeah.
but I do talk a lot about that on stage. I think on stage comedy versus Instagram comedy is very different.
Mhm,
And a lot of the Instagram comedy is very commercialized, very mainstream, kind of
mhm.
PG, and just like Benny Hill kind of physical humor. And then my stand up is when I get a little more real and sometimes more ragey.
Mm.
Where my personality comes out of that, where it
Yeah.
is very filtered
Mhm.
and cleaner.
It is. Everyone wants to be very scripted. And
Yeah,
I
and you get risk of getting your account taken away if Instagram isn't happy with what content.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I find most that moms struggle to feel lighthearted or to let go of those moments where they're really critical of themselves. Like we talked about raising your voice, or if you drop the ball with something, you forgot something for your kid that they need for school. And the things that make us feel embarrassed for how we show up as moms, I feel like moms struggle to joke about that. When in reality, it's like, you're fine. It happens. There's so much going on in your head.
Yeah, I think moms, I think I do this as well, I'm guilty, uh, are still concerned about what other moms think about them.
Mhm.
Like, I know when my kids are not wearing their jackets, I'm like, "Shit, the teacher's gonna judge me." Like, can you just carry it at least? You know? Or like if they have crumbs on their face, I'm like, "Oh my
Mhm.
god, now the teacher's gonna think that I didn't,
Mhm.
like, wash your face." Like,
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that. And I think we
Yep.
struggle with that because we always feel like we put so much pressure on ourselves to be
Mhm.
perfect, to spend enough time with your kids and be like the fun mom and nurturing and
Yep.
make little crafts with your sometimes I'm like, I don't want to play with my kid. And I have to admit that. I like my kids will be like, can we play with you? I'm like, "Ugh." And I have to admit, sometimes I'm like, I'm too tired. I don't want to play a board game.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And that's okay. That's the recharging we talked about.
Yeah.
Every mom needs that.
Yeah.
So, Alice, one last question before we pull everything together. So, you jump back into comedy. Was it, you said your oldest was about 2 or 3?
My oldest was, yeah, 3, and
Okay.
the youngest was about, like, 3 months. Yeah.
Okay. So, coming back into comedy, especially coming back in that phase of life, how did your comedy save you? How'd you save yourself? Like when you think about the hard moments you've gone through as a mom, but you look at your career and connecting with the other moms on Instagram or at your shows, how has that made you a better mom or changed your experience?
I love that question because I feel like it saved me because it put me back into comedy, in my terms, on my
Mhm,
terms, on where I wanted to do. I picked the venue was super supportive, family oriented, allow I got to see brand new moms,
mhm,
seasoned moms coming back, feeling safe, knowing that I can offer that platform, the community, and the environment for a mom to breastfeed, to change her kid's diaper,
mhm,
to allow her kid to come up on stage without anyone berating the child. Um, that to me was very healing for me to give back to these new moms and for me to do it while I'm doing something I'm passionate about. And
mhm,
thirdly, to bring my kid, my own baby, to my job. And sometimes I would be wearing my baby, talking jokes about his dad. It was so fun. I'm like, this is so cool.
Close your ears, buddy.
Yeah, there's so many things overlapping. There's like these new moms I'm making connections with and giving them
Mhm.
safe space, and I love them so much that I was like, I want to give them cookies, like I would get up early in the morning at 7 in the morning, get cookies, bring them to the show, wipe down all the sanitary mats. For me, I just wanted to do that. I just want to
Mhm.
provide that for the moms, and I know it sounds crazy. It was always about that. It wasn't about
Mhm.
the money, and then doing it while I'm doing something I love, comedy. I
Yep.
was like, "Oh, this is so healing in so many ways."
I love it.
Mm.
If they want to hear more from you, this is where I told you, you have got to plug yourself. This is your moment. How can they figure out more about you if they want to, connect with one of your shows? Give them a little bit more information there.
Yeah, I'm always active on Instagram, MomCom NYC. I always list my shows. It's always there. My website, momcom.co. Come see a live show. And when you do, I really like to say hi to people, um, and just tell me where you're from and like your name. And it's always such a pleasure to meet people in real life.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, come to a live show. That's where you get really my personality, the unedited stuff
Yeah.
from Instagram.
I love it. And we have listeners in New York that are especially, being closer to your area. So definitely go check her out. She's just been amazing to work with. She's super responsive on social media as well. So, all of you, again, I'm going to put her Instagram handle, I'm going to put her website link in the podcast description so that you can connect with her. Let her know that you listened to her episode on the Moms Working Overtime podcast. But also, Alyce, before I let you go today, just to give you one final opportunity, is there anything that you would leave with the audience, whether it just comes to advice you have from your own motherhood experience, advice from your career in comedy, that you want them to remember when they turn off today's episode?
Yeah, never be afraid to ask for help. When you need some time for yourself, take it. And even if it's a walk, you need to be physically away from your family sometimes, actually a lot of times. And it doesn't matter if it's a 10-minute walk or even have a girl trip. Take the time for yourself. It really makes a huge difference when you come back. You're reset, you're recharged, and you're ready to take on so many challenges. You'll surprise yourself on how much you can take on when you give yourself that little bit of time. And remember to laugh every day. Like if you do something stupid, just laugh. Don't do stupid things.
Absolutely. You're never alone.
Yeah.
And Alyce, I just appreciate you so much. I knew this would be a fun episode to do and put in our interview series. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here with the audience today. It just means the world.
This was so fun. Thanks for having me, Alina.
Of course. And for everyone who's listening today, my reminder for you that I will always give you every single time you come and listen to the Moms Working Overtime podcast, especially if you're having a hard day, a hard week, a hard season, is first of all, there's always a way that you can find some humor in it. You're always in this with all of us other moms. You're never, ever alone in this. And Mama, your reminder is that you're doing a really, really amazing job. And we'll talk soon. If you loved this episode of Moms Working Overtime, do me a favor. Share it on social media or send it to another mom to remind her that you love her and that she's doing such an amazing job. There's nothing more incredible that we can do in this community than remind other mamas of their strength. I'm so glad you were here today, and just know that I appreciate you an overtime amount.